Hey everybody, it's Leeroy from Leeroy Gaming, and today is the big day. It is the day when the new free update for Outriders New Horizon launches. So in preparation for this, I want to go over all the details on everything that is coming to you for free today. Because there's so much to go over, let's go ahead and jump right in and take a look at everything we need to see right now. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, smash the notification bell, and leave a comment if you want to support this channel and if you want to see more Outriders content in the future. All right, let's get started. Let's go ahead and start and go over a quick overview of all the headlining changes in this update. So we're getting expedition timers. They are getting removed. There are going to be 4 new expeditions added. A Transmog System is getting added. Tiago store has been reworked. Legendary loot drops and farming information and changes. There's going to be changes to legendary sets, changes to mods and bug fixes, changes to class trees and bug fixes, changes to skills and bug fixes, and of course the Stadia version can now also crossplay with all other platforms. So most people don't realize this, but it's not until right now that every single platform can crossplay with each other, which I think is absolutely excellent. Now, here's one feature that I think is grossly undervalued: the ability to skip the video, the intro video that we have all probably seen a million times now. So you can now skip it on all platforms except PlayStation 4, Xbox One. Wah, wah, wah. So the old generation systems still have to watch the intros. That's sad. Another really cool feature that I really like is that the Eye of the Storm now includes a pick and choose legendary item award. This is very similar to how some of the previous quests gave you an option of 3 random legendaries, or those weren't random probably, but these will be, and you pick one, which is a nice little touch. There's a quick mark functionality to vendors, improve the readability of mod descriptions, especially when viewing on large TV. That's kind of nice for those playing on TVs. And let's see here, reduce volume of background audio on certain menu and loading screens, and I added a minimum damage limit for the Broodmother's perforate ability. This will ensure that the ability does not have too large of a disparity in its minimum maximum damage output. That's interesting. So I'm assuming this means that it doesn't have a chance of hitting for so little that you don't feel it at all, and then maybe you feel it's not dangerous, and then the next time it hits you super hard, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what happened? The last time it barely tickled me, and now it just rocked me. That's how I understand this. Change the Era of the Desert configuration so it now plays like an assault rifle as intended as scrap rather than a submachine gun. Interesting. You know what? I never noticed this, but this is a gun that I often use in builds. So this is going to be very interesting to test. Let's see here. There's a bunch of fixes for, let me see, a progress blocker and a mentor main quest. Fix the bug that would cause alpha perforos to break out of CC. This is actually huge. Alphas breaking out of frozen effects if they were staggered. This is frustrating, and was frustrating, because this would limit your ability to get that extra frozen bonus damage on Technomancers especially. So this is a really, really important small note here that can have a very, very big impact on your DPS potentially. And it says, fix the bug preventing a harder wild position from progressing if a venomous perforo was the last enemy to die during one of the battles. Oh wow, never had that happen. That's good to hear now. So fix the bug in a chem plant expedition that could cause players to primary weapon to use the mod of the secondary weapon if they change weapons while activating the lever. Interesting. All right, let's keep on moving on here. All right, fixes to Moaning Winds. Fix the bug that caused the Moaning Winds mod to deal different damage between host and client. It was previously triggering twice for the client players. The damage on client will now match the damage of the host. So this is very, very interesting. I noticed this whenever I was running with other people, that their Moaning Winds damage was huge. And it seemed to be disproportional for me. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm just not playing it right. But it seems like this was definitely a bug that was occurring. With that being said, with some of the other Moaning Wind changes, I don't think people are going to be using Moaning Winds nearly as much. So these two things combined, if you're a host like me, you probably won't notice as much of the damage decrease, but if you're a client that connects to somebody else, you'll probably notice a huge drop in Moaning Wind's damage. Fixed a bug that would prevent mods inserted in armor from properly scaling with armor level. Interesting. If the armor was upgraded through Zahid. So that's interesting, and a bug would previously be fixed after your transition. I doubt people noticed this too much. So apparently there was also a bug that the even odds mod would stack up to 5 times instead of 3, so that's going to be a significant nerf here. The armor boost mod got changed, so now scales to the armor item that's inserted into it, rather than scaling the player level and stopping at 30. So this is huge, because if you happen to use this mod, it stopping at level 30 is horrible. The difference between a level 30 item and a level 50 item is quite gigantic because of the way the scheme scales. So that's definitely interesting if you use this mod. It fixed a bug that caused Emerging Stance mod to not trigger if the damage instance that proc the mod also inflicted knockback. See, I didn't know that either. I haven't used Emerging Stance in a long time, but I remember this used to be a critical buff that gives you a high damage mitigation buff for about 5 to 6 seconds. And if that wasn't triggering correctly, that's pretty bad. So I'm glad they fixed that. Fixed the bug that caused Anomaly Mutation mod to not inflict the burn or slow status as intended. So this is was an interesting mod that I tried to play around with. Whenever you shot an enemy, you would apply a random different debuff. And one of the goals was to get all the dots on the enemy. So it not proccing burn especially was critical. And slow is actually also a very good debuff that lowered the DPS that enemies would do. So these two not being inflicting or being applied would make this mod that I already thought was kind of underpowered even worse. So this at least makes it working as intended. Fixed the bug that caused Absorb Bullet mod to replenish 80% of the intended 40% of ammo. Wow, okay. I haven't used bullet absorption in a while, but apparently that was working better than intended. And now it's going to be much weaker, so this mod is probably dead in the water, sadly. This is a big one. Fix the issue that caused your frame rates to drop if you had Damage Link mod, if you use that in combination with Pain Transfer mod. And this was a big combo for Trickster. So if you were having this issue and it was basically killing your build because of the FPS drops, now it's fixed, which is great. Fixed the bug that could cause the Pyromancer's armor mod Phoenix Force to not increase anomaly power after consuming a status condition. Oh, interesting. And then fixed the bug that allowed Borrowed Time to stack its bonus infinitely if the Armor of Eons and short-term loan mods were combined and spammed. So I did not know about this. I'm very curious if people had been exploiting this. I did not see anybody talk about this, but I could imagine this being a major exploit. So if you happen to be using this in your Trickster builds, note that it's gone bye-bye, and I'm curious to see how this impacts individuals. Again, I never use this combination, but that is a part to note. Now, they also fixed some things that aren't necessarily nerfs here. So Trickster's Hunt the Prey ability used to lock up under certain circumstances. They fixed that. The Impale skill no longer blocks obelisks from continuing to charge while an impaled enemy is present. Oh, wow. So we used to complain that Impale would keep you from being able to move on from area to area or kind of event to event. And apparently now it used to block the continuations of charging as well. So this ability used to be just even worse. And at least it's now good to know that they fixed it. Description of Endless Mass now also mentions the slow status effect that it inflicts. So I didn't know it slowed stuff. So I do use Endless Mass in one of my builds, so that's going to be interesting. I didn't even know about that effect, so there we go. They fixed the bug that prevented Technomancer's Cold Snap skill from freezing enemies if it was triggered while the player rolled off an edge. That's very circumstantial, but interesting to note. Fix the bug that could cause Technomancer turrets to fall through the ground. Finally, if it was thrown too low time. Interesting enough, I love turret builds. I never had this happen to me, but I heard this happens a lot. And then fix the bug that resulted from the Pyromancer gifted class node not granting its bonus properly. All right, not bad. Now next, let's talk about expedition timers being removed. So what have they basically done? Expeditions no longer have time restrictions, and the timer is optional. So now finishing an expedition, regardless how long it takes, will earn you the expedition reward. So the main reason they did this is they didn't want to punish people that were playing builds that are maybe tanky or not min-maxed absolutely to do as much as damage as possible. Basically, they didn't want to force everybody into glass cannon builds just so that you could finish all the different timers. So this is kind of nice. It's a nice thing for players. I know there are people that are competitive and want to just get the fastest possible builds. And the good news for that is that you can still enable the timers if you want, just for kind of showing off, but it's no longer going to limit your ability to get loot. And so, as I state here, you're going to get the various levels of loots where, as they say here, the gold, silver, and bronze level rewards have been scrapped. Now, finishing an expedition, regardless of how long it takes, will earn you the expedition's reward, no matter how long you take. So here is the important answer that you may wonder. Well, how is the loot calculated now? It says, because the different expeditions have shorter and longer base completion times, they're saying now the amount of gear and drop pods resources you can receive has been scaled according to the average global level completion timer on the data observed over the past few months. So we'll have to take a look at this, but does that mean that certain levels that were primarily completed by speedrunners that only took 3 or 4 minutes, will those have horrible drop rates, and then the longer levels will have much better ones? We'll have to take a look at that, but it sounds like all the levels that were finished quickly will have lower drop rates, and again, the ones that actually took longer for people to complete, they're going to have the greatest rewards. And so this change means that longer expeditions like Scorched Lands will give you greater amounts of gear, while short expeditions such as Boomtown will give you slightly less gear. So the question is, we'll have to see what the discrepancy is. Boomtown has been known, especially with Pyromancers, you can finish it in like 4 minutes or so, pretty consistently, while other builds or levels like Scorched Lands, which I love, people will finish that anywhere between 10 and 13 minutes. I think a lot of times some people will take longer, 15, 16, 17 minutes. So the question is it 10 or 20% difference? Is it 50% difference? Is it more? That's going to really define how big of a deal this is. Honestly, I just say play whatever levels you have fun with. If you just spam one level, you're not going to have that much fun. So unpaid or free expeditions will continue to have their base bonus rewards, but all paid expeditions, so these are the ones that have the drop pod costs, offer increased rarity bonus reward. Scaling of the bonus rewards according to challengers remains as previously. So this is a kind of a big deal for people. So I have a feeling it's going to be much more common for people to want to spam the ones that kind of have a cost. These were like the second tier of expeditions that you unlocked in the game previously. So yeah, that's I could see this being having a bigger impact on what people want to run. So they're saying the scaling has been implemented so you can play any expedition and feel rewarding for the time you have invested, rather than feeling like longer or paid for expeditions are not as efficient enough ways of farming the levels. That kind of makes sense. They said the new reward system was developed using analytic data from a median player completion timer for challenges, and they've adjusted the amount of rewards based on the data. We have not based the reward structure on top player completion. This is really, really important, because if they looked at the outliers, the people that are the speedrunners, this would kind of mess up all the data and would probably frustrate the average player. So I think this is really, really, really good. And then they say the cost of paid for expeditions will now also scale with tiers and it will therefore naturally also provide higher rewards and chance for legendaries and epic items relevant to the length when compared to free expeditions. So before, there used to be a flat rate. I believe it was about 3,000 cost, 3,000 of the drop pods for the ones that did have requirements outside of the Eye of the Storm, which obviously, I forget what it is, or it was, I think 40 or 50,000. So it'll be interesting how that changes. And they're saying the scaling means that players' average legendary items per time invested will relatively consistent across all expeditions. So they're saying this will allow you more options to enjoy your expedition gameplay. I'm sure somebody's going to still figure out the perfect min-max option, but, you know, it doesn't seem like there's going to be as much incentive to home in on those. And so this is a big one. Speaking of Eye of the Storm, at completion of Eye of the Storm on Tier 15 will provide a 4 times 50% chance for legendary items plus 1 guaranteed legendary item from the selectable reward. You will additionally have a possibility to receive a legendary item via the bonus reward. So interesting. Now, the Eye of the Storm is interesting. Some people find it extremely difficult. Some people, if you have the right group, find this one of the fastest runs. So depending on your setup, this may very well be the best farm for you now. But again, it's going to still have that really high cost of the materials. And the big difference you'll see here, now that you can gamble for legendaries with your materials, this is going to potentially have a factor whether you want to run this or not. And here they have actually added a table, which is interesting. And so, for example, Boomtown, which is the fastest expedition statistically, it costs 0 draw pods to enter. The reward for completing on CT15 is 2640. That's a big difference. So for reference, in the original game before this, you would get 72,000 draw pods rewarded for completing any CT15 on gold. This is now basically, wow, that's like a third. And then chance for legendary items rolled CT15 is base chance. And number of rolls for primary rewards is 2. So this is a huge nerf. This used to be 4. This used to be 72,000. And so now, even though Boomtown is like 4 to 5 minutes if you have the right build, this is going to basically be the equivalent of roughly half, if not a little bit less, of the rewards. And then Chemplant, for example, scales up. That was another popular one. And this one now all of a sudden has 40,000 draw pods, 3 primary rewards at CT15. And we keep scaling up. And it looks like Eye of the Storm now, it's got the 40,000 entry cost. It looks like it's the only area that gives you the full 75,000 draw pods. So it's technically 3,000 more than you were getting before. It's got the highest chance of an expedition of getting legendaries to drop, and you get 4 plus a single choice from legendary. So you could get up to 5 legendaries here, it sounds like. And outside of that, the highest normal expedition is going to be Scorched Lands. It now costs 33,000 draw pods. That's huge. So that's a 10-fold increase. Before it was 3,000, and it gives you 61,500 draw pods. Again, this seems like a big nerf to the process, but don't forget, now you don't have to worry about the speed times. So there's that balance for you. So keep that in mind here. All right. Overall, I feel like this is healthy and good for the game. The people that had the min-max builds that were clearing CT15 runs easily will probably see this as a nerf overall. But I do think this is going to allow us to play with different builds, and it's not going to be quite as punishing for new players too, which I think overall is a positive thing. All right, next, let's talk about the new 4 expeditions. So they've added 4 new expeditions. Why? Because why not? Obviously, this is great that they're giving us more things to play. I think a lot of people that have been playing since the beginning or pretty close from then, we've kind of burnt out on things. And this is a great way to give us something to play until the expansion comes out. So they're saying these new exhibitions should also tide you over until the release of our coming expansion, World Slayer. Now, this is a big statement. So unless this expansion's coming out much earlier in the year than we thought, I don't think it's going to hold people over that long, but it is going to help out. So, you know, going from, I believe we have 14 expeditions right now. I don't have the head count off the top of my head, but, you know, 14, an extra 4, that's pretty good. That's what, roughly an extra 20, a little bit over 25% more runs. That's great. So each expedition features an exciting mini story, and I do agree I have played these extensively. Well, not extensively, but I got to play them in the Ambassador mini event, and I really like their little stories. And it's connecting your character and events experienced in the main campaign. So they are very, very cool. And then even new expedition players will already have access. Even new expedition players will already have access to the first of the 4 fresh expeditions, of the others unlocking at City 4, 8, and 12. So if you've already been clearing at City 15, you're going to have access to all this. But new players will kind of unlock these as they go through tiers, which is nice. So Molten Depths sends you back to Eagle Peak. City of Nomads will confront you with a character who is haunted by the sins of their past. Marshal's Complex, Corrigan, the Great Grand Marshal himself, asks you to reclaim a facility near Deadrock Pass, taken by the insurgents. And Wellspring, which I love. Tiago told you about a Pax legend of a sacred place called Atuma Itaru, where pilgrims take long travels, sacrifice their treasures into deep wells. Well, that's great. Let's go into those deep wells and get those treasures that have been sacrificed. So cool stuff being added. Now here's the other big feature. Transmog System has been added. Allows you to change the visual aspects of items to another item while maintaining the mods and stats of original piece. So basically, they're explaining what a mod system is. This includes, for weapons, it also includes all the sound effects, which is really, really cool. And so what I love about this, it's entirely free, can be done almost any time. It's not convoluted. It doesn't have any microtransactions, which is really, really nice of them. It's very nice that they're doing things like Square Enix has been kind of known to do. And this is a very anti-EA format. I could imagine if EA had published this, they'd be like, all right, new Transmog System. Well, don't mind all the crazy microtransactions related to it. So this is a feature that I agree has been asked from a lot of people since the beginning, especially since when we want to min-max our builds, it oftentimes creates very convoluted and wacky looking outfits. So this is really, really nice. So what's interesting they say here is we do not have the requirements of a live service game. We do not need to rely on a system like Transmog to nickel and dime players. This is why we made it as simple, straightforward, and player-friendly as possible. It's interesting that they're saying this, that they don't have a live service game requirement. I wouldn't be necessarily against if they charge for certain systems, but I see this is a nice way of them just kind of, I think more than anything, reinforcing, hey, this is not game as a service. You know, even though I think a lot of players like me wish it kind of was, because we'd get even more content quicker. But, you know, it's nice to point this out. And, you know, I guess I don't mind that we're getting this for free. So this is really easy. It's access to a new customizable menu. So like on PC, you just press L when you're in inventory on any of the systems. And then when you open it, you get access to all the collected available looks that you have. So in short, I'll help explain this. Anytime you find gear in the game, it will be automatically put into your Transmog library. It is account-wide, so across all your characters. And what's great, that this means that if you have a legendary set for a Trickster, you can apply it onto your Devastator or your Pyromancer, etc. So this is really, really, really nice. You don't have to sell an item. You don't have to disenchant it to get the look. It just, as soon as it's equipped, and it says here, all items that are currently in your stash and inventory have been added to your Transmog library. So interesting, it says from now on, any gear item you find in Outriders will be automatically added to your Transmog library. So this does mean that if you don't have a specific piece of gear maybe you had in the past and you sold it or broke it down, it will not be as part of that library. You're gonna have to re-get it. I know players like me that are kind of obsessive and we keep at least one version of everything. You'll probably have a pretty close part of your library that's going to be set up. More likely than not, it's going to be some of the unique blue and epic item looks that people will be unlocking, because you can have all the whites, all the greens, blues, purples, and that's interesting. Not that I think that a lot of people will want to transmog to look like the white items, but I think if you're an advanced player where whites and greens don't drop anymore, that'll probably be missing from your inventory or for transmogging. So I could see some min-maxers, I guess, having to redo low-level content in order to get those transmogs. That's a bit of a pain. And they do emphasize anything can be transmogged unlimited amount of time. Do note that transmog is only possible in the same gear category, like automatic shotguns into automatic shotguns. You can't change a pistol into a sniper rifle. And I do like that transmog items have an icon under item to identify them as transmogged. So even though they're not adding ways to lock your gear from selling, I think some people what they may do is items that they want to make sure that they don't accidentally delete, they're going to transmog them just to make sure to have kind of a visual effect of like, hey, this is an item I definitely do not want to sell. So there's like a getaway that you can, mark things as, hey, don't sell this. And it says transmog items retain the color shading of the original gear piece. So if you make a legendary gear piece look like a common gear piece, for example, the background, it will remain legendary. That's important as well, mainly to make sure that you don't delete some really good items. How many times can we write the word transmog in this section? That's funny. They said they've also added 11 new skins to the game, 1 per weapon class for you to hunt down. You won't be able to obtain these from standard drops, though a little exploration will be in order. So I can definitely tell you that of the 4 new main expeditions, there are kind of secrets to unlock. And when you unlock these secrets, you do get these new skins. I don't know about the other ones. Now, another feature that was requested by people for a long time is for Tiago's store to be reworked. This is great. So he sells legendary gear, but in the past, it was one stationary set that never ever changed. And once you sold them, they were gone forever. But now you can reroll available legendary gears on offer for a flat cost. And there's also one of the slots that just lets you to randomly purchase a mystery legendary gear piece. Now, I don't know. I guess if you really want to do random, you can. It costs quite a bit less than re-rolling it or the base cost of a legendary, it looks like. But the problem is it's random, so random that unless I guess if you're brand new, this may be worth it. But if you're trying to pick get a very specific legendary, the best thing is going to be to re-roll the offers and then, purchase only if you have one pop up that you need. So the secondary one to get a random legendary is only useful if you're trying to increase your collection and you don't have that many legendaries. Otherwise, I don't think that's a very good value. And they're saying, why is this done? Well, this is to find another way of increasing the amount of ways that you can get legendaries, and combining that with the added storm changes. They want to make it so that people don't take nearly as long to get that one specific legendary drop. Before the buffs to the 100% increased chance for legendaries, there was one time that famously on my streams, it took me like 4 weeks on stream to get one drop to finish my trickster build. So I remember how frustrating that was. So this is going to make it so people don't get that. Now, it is important to note here they're saying rerolling Tiago's offer will always generate 3 weapons and 4 armor pieces. So it's going to kind of have a good ratio, so it's not going to be all weapons or all armor, for example. There are no limits so often you can do this. Obviously, it costs you drop pods to reroll, so there is a technical limit as far as resources. Now, they did state that unlike all the other timers that are based on, a passive timer, they felt that this would have kind of made the gameplay not so fun. And of course, I think it would have also been too low of a cost to increase your chance of getting your legendary loot. So this is why they chose, instead of them just people like setting timers and checking every hour or half hour or longer, which isn't a very fun system. They would want to make it so that, obviously, if you have more drop pods, you can re-roll it quicker if you want, or if you don't, then you were incentivized to run more expeditions and get those drop pods. So I like that. And they also mentioned that the drop pod resource cost for refreshing mysterious purchase will rise along with your level of items. So basically, depending on your average item level, this will go up, which makes sense. Another big thing here is the minimum item level is dropped to 35 from 45. And this is a big deal because people a lot of times were getting kind of stuck and struggling to get to CT 45. So 35 is pretty early. You at level 50, when you finish the campaign, you're around level 30. So this means that right around CT 4, maybe 5, you're going to be able to start getting legendaries from Tiago's store and actually equipping them. So I like that a lot. Now here is a big point. I mentioned before that the random mystery item wouldn't be that useful, except for when you're earlier on in your gameplay and progression. And this is going to be emphasized by this element here. I did not notice previously, but mystery purchases do not have a minimum level, so you can always equip it. Why is this important? This is important because somebody could run you through, let's say you're like CT1 or you just hit level 30, and you get carried by somebody through a CT15. You get all your materials, and you could go in here, and let's say your item level is 30 now, or let's say it's like 20. You could still pick that mystery item, and it's going to scale to that because there's no minimum level. So if you were like, again, level 25 or level 10, even theoretically, you could roll that random item and you will be able to equip it. So this is really, really nice for helping gear up lower level characters, make them feel like they're getting some cool items. So this is really, really cool for carrying. I like this a lot. And final thing is the cost of regular items sold by Tiago have also been lowered, which makes sense. I always felt like the epic items were overpriced. And especially now that you have so many more ways to get more legendaries, I would have felt if these did not drop, people would never use it on the epics and only use it on the legendaries, which I think is still going to be the case. But at least now there's a little bit more incentives to get some of those epics still. Now they're making a note here about legendary loot drop and farming information and changes. So this is an overview of everything that changed. So as we've already talked with the New Horizon update, Ida Storm, you're going to get a pick and choose legendary reward, which is something that people have been asking for a lot. I know that in our videos we had mentioned this numerous times, so I'm glad this got implemented, where you get to choose 3 items. It's going to be 2 armor and 1 weapon, and you pick one, which is nice. We just discussed the Tiago store overhaul, so make sure to check that timestamp out if you haven't seen it already. And again, as mentioned earlier, also with New Horizons, they got rid of the expedition timer, so that changes things. Back in June, wow, I can't believe that was all the way back in June. They doubled the legendary drop rates, so this is important for kind of new players or returning players. And they also had an anti-duplication system that was implemented in the past as well, which is nice, where it basically improves the chance but doesn't guarantee that you're not going to get gear, basically duplicate gear, which is really, really nice. Now let's go ahead and talk about legendary set changes. And this is a big deal for some builds because unfortunately there were a lot of sets that were just completely underwhelming. And while this isn't a perfect fix, in my opinion, it definitely goes a long way. So let's take a look what some of the changes are. So under Trickster, the Trespasser set that was extremely underwhelming in the past. So player characters inside Slow Trap cannot die. Now they also increase the damage by 6% per enemy affected by a deception skill. Additional players cannot die inside Slow Trap. So this basically is important because there are numerous deception skills like the thrown knives, and you can use mods to increase the amount of targets. So it's very possible that you may be able to get reliably, let's say if you can get 5 targets affected by one of these skills, that's a 30% increase. That's okay. Now, do note it says damage, so it's all damage. So this will work for anomaly damage as well as weapon damage. This is especially important because there aren't that many ways to increase anomaly damage from set bonuses in a lot of cases, especially for Trickster. Now, if you have a slow trap and let's say you get like 10 enemies in there, this could be a 60% damage. Do I think that this is enough? I don't know. I would have liked this to be a little higher to compete with some of the Pyromancer abilities that still increase, like the Akari set that seem to increase damage by hundreds of %. But, you know, this is definitely an upgrade. Now, for the Technomancer, with the Torrential Downpour set, extra cluster bombs spawned by the set bonus have had their deployment time reduced, which is nice. It's going to be a little quicker. A bug that prevented extra mine deployment after direct hit was also fixed. So this forced people to kind of throw the mines at the ground, which was kind of counterintuitive. And so if you basically threw the mines into somebody's head, it would explode on them immediately, but not proc that extra bonus, which was a bit of a bummer. So that's kind of basically a bug fix, not a buff. Now, Grim Inventor is a big deal. So this set bonus was horrible overall. I mean, it was useful, but it wasn't really a DPS increase. It just lets you use Tools of Destruction more often. It said a confirmed hit with Pain Launcher refilled 20% of ammunition for both minigun and RPG. This only happens once for each of Tool of Destruction usage. Now, it was like per hit, so if 5 of the missiles hit, you get all your ammo back, which wasn't bad, except the fact that it could only proc once per Tools of Destruction, so it wouldn't allow you to like infinitely keep the effect going. But now, while Tools of Destruction is active, a confirmed hit with Pain Launcher refills 20% of the ammunition for both minigun and the RPG. That's interesting. The big thing here now is that it is not limited. So you can have this if you have a way to have Pain Launcher lower the cooldown. And to give you an idea, I've, in some of my builds that you can check out on this channel, I get the Pain Launcher cooldown to less than 10 seconds. So as long as you're running around with either your missile launcher or your minigun active, you can slam down your Pain Launcher now and basically guarantee yourself to have infinite minigun or RPG ammo. I feel like the problem with minigun is still that it's very, very slow when you're moving around with it, so you don't always want to have it up. The RPG, though, you have no limitations, so this lets you have pretty much infinite RPG ammo or minigun ammo. Again, you may still force yourself to drop the minigun, but I like this because you're not going to need to have other mods to try and increase the ammo of these, so the gameplay style is more viable. Do I still think it'd be nice to have some sort of damage component on this? Yes, but at least this is not bad. Now, Pyromancer, they're trying to make some changes here to make things be more competitive with the Akari set, which is by far the most overpowered set in the game. So the Lava Lich set, the set bonus for Lava Lich has had a cooldown reduction and provides increase to 30% from 10%. This is a nice change. Is it enough? I don't know. I feel like it needs to have an even greater increase on damage bonus as opposed to just this cooldown reduction, but it goes somewhere. This is interesting, the Reforged set, and let me read over this because this has got a lot of changes. So Reforged was originally intended to be a long-range firepower set. However, players have mostly used it as an anomaly power build. That is correct. We have therefore changed the attributes of this set to better support anomaly damage build. Yay! The long-range attribute on all set pieces has been changed to either cooldown reduction or skill leech attribute. Especially cooldown reduction, this is a very welcome change. So the Reforged head armor set piece, Call of the Reforged, has had its attributes swapped. The health attribute has been replaced with anomaly power, thank goodness. This was the only, I believe, the only headpiece that did not have either anomaly or firepower. And nobody wants health bonus. So this is really, really nice. Long range attribute has been replaced with either cooldown reduction or skill leech attribute. So it makes the helmet more suitable to the new functionality of anomaly power, which makes sense. And so mods have swapped. So the Reforged chest piece, armor of the Reforged, has the mod swapped. So the bullet absorption mod has been replaced with Ash Grass mod, which inflicts ash on all enemies in the thermal bomb AoE range. This should make the thermal bombs much easier to use as part of the set, which kind of makes sense. And then the Reforged Lower Armor set piece, Waste Scuffle Reforged has had its mod swapped, so Wildfire mod has been replaced with Fire Frenzy, which provides an additional use of the thermal bomb. Again, feeding into the concept that this should be built and utilize the thermal bomb set, which is not bad. And then the boots, which we'll see if people use. The Nova Master has been replaced with Anomaly Hunger. So making this change, we expect the Feed the Flame skill to deal more damage, making it a better tool to detonate thermal bomb. And then most importantly, the set bonus has its damage increased. So using thermal bomb increases the next damage of Feed the Flame by 75%, up 25%. And using Feed the Flame increases damage of the next thermal bomb by 75%. So again, as you can kind of see, this build is all about rotating Feed the Flame and thermal bomb. So it's upping the damage on both of them. And then, of course, the changes to the getting anomaly power on this set, as well as some of these other mods, is going to have a pretty dramatic impact on the effectiveness of the set. It is going to open up some new build options. Because there's no more timers, you're not necessarily going to feel pressure to only use the Akari set. Do I think Akari set will still do the most damage? Probably. Yes, most likely. But you know what? Who doesn't love thermal bomb? I know I do. So I'm definitely going to be making a build utilizing this for the future. All right, Devastator. So there's a new set bonus for Death Proof. So before it would just reduce the cooldown of Boulder Dash by 90%. But now it reduces the cooldown of Boulder Dash by 90% and increases firepower by 15% of the armor. So I tried to make a Boulder Dash build that was anomaly power based, but this just goes even further in the direction of having this be a firepower build. Now, this is 15% of armor. So this is a big deal potentially if you can stack armor super high. So firepower does not scale as well as anomaly power as far as damage, what I've noticed. But because this could be a decently large number, if you stack armor like crazy, this is pretty good. It doesn't seem like there's any limitations on how much you get from this. So this gives you a reason to stack your armor higher than capping at your, I think 85% physical damage reduction, for example. And then they swapped the Deathproof Glove set. Kingslayer has been replaced with Death's Door. I don't remember what Death's Door is right off the bat, but Kingslayer is a really good firepower mod. I don't know if this is going to be a buff or a nerf. We'll have to see. And then a Martial set. The set bonus on Martial has had its shared bonus derived from anomaly damage increased to 40%, previously 10%. So this is very welcome for those of you that are using Martial with anomaly power builds, for example. And then it looks like the Martial Glove Armor set piece, Martial's Gauntlets, it swapped Shattered Armor and replaced it with Mosh Pit mod. So Shattered Armor mod removed armor from enemies, while Mosh Pit mod applies the status effect Vulnerability. So this is important because Devastators struggle to apply Vulnerability. And Vulnerability is quite effective on all builds. So as the Martial Gear is more of an anomaly power set, we decided it was a better fit to increase the damage from all sources instead of reducing armor. This makes sense because for those of you that don't know, anomaly power bypasses armor automatically. So stripping armor was kind of a waste, and we'd always want to kind of replace the Shattered Armor mod anyway. So under the statue set, the status set has had its attribution swapped. Lead skill attribute has been replaced with close range damage attribute. Makes sense. This is a close range damage firepower build set, and so it made no sense to have skill life leech because that only leeches off anomaly power based abilities, and you're not going to have that much anomaly power damage in the statue set. Now next we're going to talk about changes to mods, and do note that they're saying these are changes to mods that have undergone since April, so some of these are not going to be new. But let's go take a look at the major points they have here. The biggest one, of course, is Fortress has been majorly reworked, and I want to emphasize majorly nerfed. Although some people may find this more fun. So shots increase your current armor and resistance by 5%, stacking up to 3 times. Now, you could say that this is basically adding a defensive buff, which it is. But remember, most people use this as a DPS buff because it was basically a flat damage buff. So let's keep that in mind. So here you can get up to 15% armor and 15% resistance. And maximum stacks, the buff is doubled. So it goes to 30% armor, 30% resistance. And it activates 30% damage increase for 10 seconds. So the cooldown between stacks is 0.2 seconds. So this is important because this keeps from otherwise, if they didn't have a cooldown, you could have a rapid fire weapon that fires super crazy and stack this immediately. So what this basically means is in roughly a little bit under half a second, theoretically, you could get this max stack, get this 10-second buff, and then it cooldowns. So let's take a look. They did change it from originally, it used to be 3 stacks, it's now 5. And the cooldown, this is important. Before the cooldown was 1 second, which was horrible. Now it's 0.2. So this allows you to more quickly stack up the buff. So your downtime for this buff is going to be lower. Now here's an important thing to counter this, because if you remember, I believe, what was it? It used to be a 42 or 40% damage increase that was up all the time. So this was a significant damage increase or debuff. So the way they kind of balance this is that they have buffed each class's skill tree nodes that increase anomaly power. Should you invest fully into these, the AP builds running Fortress will have a similar damage output for Fortress pre-change. But the addition will be that you are going to have also the additional armor and resistances, which is interesting. I think most anomaly power builds that utilize this, because to note, this is the only mod currently in the game that directly impacts the damage you do with anomaly power. So this is going to be big. The difference is you're going to have to shoot your gun now. There are a lot of builds that just spam the abilities and don't really use your guns. Now you're going to have to. Slow firing weapons are going to be at a huge disadvantage here. So having an assault rifle or a fast firing shotgun maybe to apply these basically stacks is going to be key. So I think most players, because your weapons will do very little damage, they're probably just going to shoot things 3 times as quickly as they can, get the buff up. When it drops, they're just going to reapply. So at least now it's going to be quicker. Before it used to take, 5 seconds, because 1 second cooldowns and 5 stacks, that was a nightmare. Now it's 3 times 0.2. You're probably going to get like a assault rifle and spam it 3 times and be done with it. So the cooldown mechanic for all mods are now universal cooldowns. And cooldowns for mods are set to be per character rather than per mod instance. This is important. So basically this nerfs Moaning Winds. Bottom line. So you can no longer basically have 3 different mods like Moaning Winds that have an 8-second cooldown, 1 on each weapon, proc it, swap over, proc it, swap over, proc it. Because now if you have 3 instances of Moaning Winds, you use it on your main gun, you swap over, they're all on cooldown. So you can still only have one proc per character per that set time. Huge nerfs. So it basically, for the most part, nerfs those builds. However, note that it says Moaning Winds has its damage increased by 60%. So basically what this does is if you use Moaning Winds as intended with 1 weapon, you're actually going to have an increase of damage, which is nice. It's just going to strongly de-incentivize having it on more than 1 weapon. So GG. Here are some other buffs. Concentration Blast increased by 27%. So I'm not going to go over all of these because these are just flat numbers, but it looks like quite a few of these have been increased. I want to point out some of the ones that stand out because they're popular. Kinetic Stomp, 34% increase, that's big. Weakness Trap, which is huge because Weakness Trap was horrible. It increased the damage by 237%. So that may turn it from useless to somewhat valuable. Sandstorm, I'm glad. This is a very popular mod. It increases damage by 42%. I always thought it was underpowered for the long cooldown and the fact that the tornado could move or the enemies could move. So I really like this. Wrath of Moloch, which I thought was one of the best mods in the game for proccing. If you can crit things, increased by 37%. That's great. Ravenous Locust, increased damage by 50% from base dot tick per second from 4 to 6.66. Is this enough? I don't know. I always thought the cooldown on this was way too long and the damage was too low. Maybe this is good. I wish. Oh, here we go. All right, just kidding. I have now officially changed my tune on this. Not only is it a 50% damage increase, but had its duration reduced to 4 seconds from 6, from 4 down to 6. It used to be 10 seconds originally. This is important because that means you're getting the damage done quicker. And that also means that you can basically get its effect off. A lot of times you'd have this long dot, and by the time it actually did all its damage, the enemies were long dead. So this allows you to get a faster burst. So do note the damage has not been nerfed. It just means the damage is now getting done in 4 seconds instead of the original 10 seconds. That is a big deal. Ravenous Locust may not be absolutely atrocious anymore. And the fact that also applies a debuff, this may be viable. Radiation Splash. So this is a very popular combo with Moaning Winds on basically your secondary weapons. And now its damage has been increased by 208%. So I'm calling it right now. I believe Moaning Winds is going to be now utilized on your secondary weapons only. One secondary weapon with Radiation Splash. So you have your primary combo, it has no Moaning Winds. You're going to swap over, use your Moaning Winds, combo with Radiation. Radiation Splash effect also applies vulnerability. That's going to do a ton of damage. Remember, Moaning Winds got buffed again, and then you swap to your main weapon. So you're going to have a Moaning Wind spam that's going to be situationally more powerful per hit, but now you're just not going to spam it and cycle it as much. So I actually like that. So the effect of Gun Shield has been changed. It will now provide a 30% increase in firepower rather than a flat numerical increase, which is good because this is going to allow it to scale. Winter Blast AoE range changed to 5 meters, previously 4 meters. This is from early September. Ultimate Anomaly Surge has damage increased by 37%. This is important. Recently, this was in September, they buffed Clay Torrent, Ultimate Storm Whip, String Goss. So this is nice. The biggest one of all these buffs was Anomaly Enhancement. Had its coefficient increased from 30% anomaly power to 40%. This was the biggest buff and the most useful. Most of these other ones I found, they weren't that useful yet. So those are the changes there for you. Armor mod wise, let's see here. The ones that most of these are August. Let me see. I'll tell you, these are August. These are all old. So none of this is new. I'll have it on screen here if you want to zoom in, or you can look it up yourself, but none of these are new, so I'm not gonna waste your time on that. Okay, class tree changes. Probably the biggest one universally is going to be the changes to the way that AP nodes are. They used to be 6% each, now they're 10%. What this basically means is if you have an AP build, you need to hunt down all of these AP nodes to be optimal, especially with the change to the Fortress or the nerf to the Fortress mod. So that's an important thing to know. For Trickster, Disruption Shield, the shield provided by use of deception skills increased from 20 to 50%. So that's good for tankiness. Profit Squared, healing provided by this node has been increased from 5 to 10% per ammo pickup. I don't think anybody ever uses this. This is too situational. Technomancer, sidearm adept. Okay, nobody cares about sidearms, but it increases the damage of sidearm guns. I guess if somebody's trying to make like a really fun niche sidearm, handgun build, that could be really fun and tongue-in-cheek. Pyromancer, steady fire, the weapon recoil reduction increased from 30 to 40%. Again, yeah, no. Sidearm adept, weapon damage bonus per node for pyro. I don't know why they're upping this. Maybe they're trying to create the opportunity for sidearm builds, but I don't think this is enough, but interesting. Devastator also, the ammo node increases damage from 5 to 10% per ammo pack, or the healing provided. Again, this is so random that I don't know. I don't think anybody uses this. And again, recoil. So this is these changes to the nodes really underwhelming. The only thing of interest, really honestly, is the AP buffs. And let's move on. All right, let's take a look at the skill changes to Trickster. And when it comes to Skill Trap, the Speed Boost mod has an additional effect. Before, it just increased movement speed within the sphere, which was pointless. But now speed boost will now reduce the duration of revives within slow trap by 50%. So I guess the tactic is you drop it on a dead player or a player that needs reviving, and you can res them quicker. Okay. And they reduce the slow trap. This is interesting. Cooldown of slow trap has been reduced by almost 10 seconds, from 30 seconds to 21 seconds. And obviously you can get a ton of cooldown reduction. So you can have this up probably realistically every 10 seconds or so. So that's kind of cool. Borrowed time, reduces cooldown of borrowed time by 5.5 seconds from 13.5 to 8 seconds. That's huge. This means you can do borrowed time even without major cooldown reduction, or if you get cooldown reduction on it, it's going to be up. You can cast it almost all the time. The base damage from aggressive teleportation has been increased by 111%. So that's pretty nice if you use that mod. Hunt the Prey. So the damage dealt by Backstabber has been increased by 100%. So this never scaled really well. I still don't know if it's going to scale really well. I don't know if anybody's going to use it, but at least if you do, especially at low levels, this is going to be maybe more useful. Temporal Slice. So this was back from June to basically up the damage on this. So again, this is an old buff. Let's see, Time Rift. These are all kind of old buffs. So you can take these from August. So we can take a look at that. Nothing new here otherwise. Now for Technomancer, again, I'm going to leave this up here for a second here. It looks like after reviewing this, these are just a review of all the changes to Technomancer skills since the changes back in June. So nothing here, unfortunately, is new from this patch. Everything is going to be big. What is big has already been covered numerous times, but again, feel free to take a look at here and pause the video if you want to take a look at it. Now looking at the Pyromancer skill buffs again here, it looks like these are also, there's nothing new here. They've all been changes from August or before. But again, if you return to this game from a long absence, make sure to check this out. I left that up on screen long enough so you can kind of pause it and zoom in if you want. Looking at the buffs and changes to the Devastator skill line, again, just as before, it doesn't look like they added anything new here. So the biggest thing I do want to kind of re-emphasize is the fixes to the Devastator's Impale. This basically makes it so that the game will detect impaled enemies as dead even before they disappear. This universally had issues with while enemies were in the impale animation. It would keep your game from proceeding. Now this was a bigger deal when there was a time limit on expeditions. Now that that's gone, this is not nearly as big of a deal, but it was still a bit of annoyance for people. Everything else, again, you can take a look at the snapshot if you haven't seen it before. Now, there are some quality of life changes that have been added as well. There's a couple ones I want to point out. You can skip the Outriders intro, except for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One players. That's sad. You can quick mark functionality to vendors. That's so you can mark things quickly to delete them, for example. Let's see here. So this is kind of nice for if you play random people. You made it so you cannot kick people from towards the end of expedition sessions. This was back in June. And now I think they made it even go a step further that you can't kick somebody even when before they've picked up their loot at the end of the level, which is huge deal. I'm assuming this also means accidentally if like you were to go back to your main screen where it would auto kick people. So that's good for them. And then there's one big thing here, which I like. Let's see here. The Earthborn Gear Hell's Rangers DLC equipment can now be scrapped. This is important. Again, this is from back in June, but for those of you that still have this sitting in your bank or an alts bank because you couldn't delete it, it was just taking up a room, you can finally get rid of that. Yay. So that's the main thing here for you. Everything else, I'll keep this up, but none of this is really otherwise new. But they are nice quality of life improvements if you're coming to the game or returning, and if you, for example, quit at the very beginning of the game when the connections were really horrible. And the final thing we want to focus on and mention is the New Horizon Celebration package details. So as long as you launch and download the game, it looks like between November 16th and November 30th, you receive a free legendary armor item on your most experienced character inventory or stash within 24 to 48 hours. And they did mention during the broadcast that this is something that you haven't gotten before or you don't have currently in your inventory, for example. So It's nice, especially for newer players, returning players. Maybe you'll get something that you've been looking for, maybe not. If you've been playing a bunch and have everything, this is not as big of a deal, but it's a nice little thing for beginning or returning players. All right, guys, I know this has been a really, really long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, especially those that are coming back and want to get an overview of all the changes. The game, it really is in a great state. From somebody that loves this game and plays it quite a bit, it's a great time to come back to the game. If you're brand new, this is a perfect time to get started. And hopefully this will keep us interested as we await more information about the expansion for 2022. So let's go and have some fun in Outriders, boys. All right, guys. That being said, as always, hopefully if you enjoyed this content and want to see more of it, make sure to like, subscribe, smash that notification bell, drop me a comment, let me know what you like to see as far as my coverage in future videos for Outriders. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much as always. You guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys in the next video.